my name is Jennifer Wang. I co-founded and lead Nashville POC Sangha, and I'll just spell Sangha. In Sanskrit, that means spiritual community. So the group is a meditation community for people of color, where we host meditation sessions specifically just for POC. And then we also host some other events that are more broad as well. At the big picture level, the work that we do is for liberation. And I think of it as internal liberation and external liberation. The internal liberation is looking at our own minds and getting to know our own minds and what hooks us. So when something external happens to us, how do we internalize it? How do we hold on to it so it creates suffering? And so the liberation is learning to be with ourselves, be friendly with ourselves, be really kind to ourselves, and learn how to, no matter what's happening, be real with what's happening in this moment, and then relieve the suffering that might be coming from whatever's happening in the world. The external liberation then is once we've done this kind of internal healing, this internal getting to know ourselves, this internal coming into the present moment, then we can take that knowledge, we can take that internal knowledge and take wise action to create external liberation. So these are now all the isms that we exist in. This is now also addressing a question of who's the community that we serve. So the main community that we serve is people of color. So when you think of people of color, a lot of the issues that we deal with come from racism, come from caste. And so when we have this internal liberation or this practice of internal liberation, I don't know if I'm ever going to be completely liberated, but I'm always going to be working on it. Then we can meet these external circumstances and start to make change externally that comes from a wise, grounded place.
Everything.
Yeah, I think we can also do both, right? I think we can't do both without the other. Like we can't do an internal without external, because there may be external factors that are preventing you from being able to be friendly with yourself or sit in silence or whatever that might be. And vice versa, if you don't have an internal grounding, then you could just be out there trying to solve things, fix things, and causing more harm. And maybe I'll share a little bit more about why the POC Sangha, National POC Sangha, when we meet in a group that's just people of color. And some people will say, some white folks will say, well, I want to be an ally and come and learn about people of color. Can I come as an ally? And we specifically say no. And we appreciate the desire to have allyship, but the space that we create just for people of color is as safe a space as possible for people to be vulnerable and to meet their minds, right? This activity, this exercise, this practice of meeting our own minds and nurturing our own hearts is pretty like vulnerable. And when we talk about suffering, a lot of suffering that people of color encounter is racial suffering. And so if we're in a mixed group with white folks, there can all sometimes be code switching or like things that we don't want to say because we don't want to offend someone, and vice versa. Like a white person could maybe feel defensive about something or want to say something, but be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that or use those words or whatever. So then you have this like protecting of ourselves that could potentially happen in this space where we're trying to make it as authentic of a space as possible. Like
As
that
possible.
acknowledging that we still have differences as people of color, as people of different genders, different physical abilities, all the differences that we still have, those could still create tension, friction, whatever it might be. But at least we can start with the starting point of we're all people of color. We've been through a certain level of, wow, that goes back far. Also, you use the word career, and I do this as like a part-time thing. And I have a background in a lot of capitalism business. And now I consider my career to be in climate change. So I've evolved a lot of what my career looks like. And that I think comes from this waking up from my practice. And then this meditation, mindfulness, community building work, I almost see as like my calling that will never go away. So it's the stuff that I do around my career, underneath my career, in addition to my career. But some of the challenges in that specific area, and especially with building this community for people of color, I think there's internal and external again. So when I first started it, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm like, I am this Asian American woman wanting to lead and offer my kind of guidance to a group of people of color in a place like Nashville. Most of those people of color, just from the statistics, are going to be Black. I don't have the experience of growing up Black in this country, living as a Black person in this country. So that imposter syndrome was telling me, who do I think I am to lead this group? I had a lot of conversations around that with colleagues, friends who were Black, Asian, different races. And they really helped me to see that what I'm doing, the teachings that I'm offering are kind of the Buddhist teachings that are coming through me. And I'm not saying here's a special Asian version of Buddhist teaching or Black version of Buddhist teachings. The teachings are the teachings. What I'm doing is creating a space that feels safe and even sacred for us to be able to open to the teachings. And there are very specific things that I do to create this safety and sense of openness. So it's not like it's no different from if I were in a mixed group, but that imposter syndrome definitely was there. And it's something that it's, just like everything I do in my life, it's a continual learning journey. Yeah, that's a great question. So somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago, I decided that I wanted to introduce more spirituality in my life. I didn't grow up with any religion or spirituality, and I'd heard good things about Buddhism. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go check out Buddhism. And at the Buddhist place, they taught me how to meditate. And so that became my introduction to self-care, just the act of meditating. And then I started learning the teachings. And so I had this balancing of the teachings with the actual practice moving forward. And as I got deeper and deeper into the practice, it really started to like change my life more and more, not in like a I need to change my life type of way, but just it was like a waking up process. So like certain things that felt okay to me before didn't feel okay anymore, and vice versa. And so it's getting more and more into my own personal practice. And then it started to feel like I wanted to teach, and that teaching would actually be a way to deepen my own practice. When I moved to Nashville in 2019 from Los Angeles with a couple of years of like self-taught racial justice. Like I had been reading a ton of books, watching the movies, started then to have conversations with communities and friends. And so I came to Nashville. Part of the reason actually I moved to Nashville is because I had this mindfulness background. I had this kind of self-taught racial justice education. And I was like, well, maybe I can bring those two things together in a town like Nashville. That's really what motivated me to move here. And I didn't come here saying I'm going to start this community, but I just know I wanted to bring those two things together, especially since I was coming here and moving into a very white dominated corporate world. It became kind of an organic thing that this group started. It came from a need and like being a part of other BIPOC meditation groups that kind of came and went. And I was like, let's just make this happen. I feel like there's a need, and a lot of what the need came from was the sense of community, like building community where we can just be with ourselves. So in kind of building this community, I think whenever people build things, there's sometimes the tendency to be like, okay, we need to do this, this, and this, and like do more, and more, and more, and more, and get in kind of like a stressed situation where you feel like you need to build something and it's really important. So you have to put a lot of time and effort into it. I really wanted this community and the team behind it to be easeful. Like I didn't want this to be another thing that stressed us out. So there were like we started out Nashville POC Sangha with 4 facilitators. Now it's basically I'm the main facilitator. Life has come up for people, like we've had challenges. And so we've really had to like pivot what our meeting cadence looks like and be good with how many people show up, a lot of people or not a lot of people, without trying to like stress myself out with being a master marketer or whatever it is. Like that's really high on my priority list, to make the operation of the community very easeful. And that also comes with the financial part of it as well, where in a lot of Buddhist communities, Buddhist teachings, you're not charging a fee. It's like a whole different way of economics. You're not charging a fee, it's done on donation. And so it's trusting that the donation will support the community, but also being brave with how we communicate the need for the donations. Have there been any turning points in my career? Yeah, definitely. I would say as work has gotten more stressful, because as I was saying, Nashville POC Sangha has been something that I do kind of in my free time, even though it's like one of the most important things in my life, like it's not paying the bills. So when things have gotten really busy with work, and it starts to feel like it could be overwhelming to maintain the same cadence of meetings or whatever it is for Nashville POC Sangha, um, that's been tough. And I've wondered whether I need to just walk away from it. Also, especially during COVID, when our participation would dwindle, and it kind of goes like this all the time anyways, but when the participation would dwindle, I would start to wonder, well, do I need to make a massive shift in how I do this? Do I need to shut it down for a little bit? But that never happened. It was just a matter of pivoting my approach so that it could continue to be easeful. Are there any major objectives for the rest of this year? I would really love for as many people as possible to find out about this work that we do, because I feel like especially in 2024, it's going to be a big year. I think it's going to be a very emotional up and down year for a lot of us. And I think the tools that we teach as practices for ourselves, they're really like self-compassion tools. They're tools of finding stillness and peace, tools of developing our own sense of like choice and power in where our minds are. And I feel like that could be of a lot of benefit to people in this kind of crazy year, I think, that we have ahead of us. So I would love just for people to find out about us. And if they come, great. If they don't come, that's fine too. I have an email newsletter where if people can't make it, I actually write a summary of like the thing that I taught in that week, in that monthly Thursday Zoom gathering. So if people sign up for our email list, maybe that's a way to start to get introduced to these teachings of getting to know our own minds. And it doesn't have to be like come and meditate for a long time. Like I want to partner with organizations and see what other organizations need and what kind of format works the best for other organizations and their communities. I have an identical twin sister who lives in LA and is an actress. I would say if you treat your entire life as a learning journey, then you can never go wrong, right? If you treat everything as a learning journey, there's like this humility that comes with it and this open-mindedness that comes with it. And also this like gentleness that comes with it, so that when I mess up, because I mess up, when I mess up, you can be like, oh, I can learn from that. That was there to teach me something. And also to not forget self-care. And by self-care, I don't mean taking a bubble bath and drinking champagne. I mean, speaking to yourself with a voice of care and being like, sometimes if I'm feeling uptight or nervous or disappointed in myself or something, I'll just kind of, I don't know if you can see on the screen, like put my hand near my throat or on my heart and to be like, and I'll just say to myself, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Like I do that for myself. And so that's what I see as self-care. Like we spend so much time trying to take care of other people and being kind and gentle to other people, we sometimes forget to do that with ourselves. I'm so glad you asked that question. So the practice that I teach with paying attention to the breath is a movement of the mind, not of the breath. So if the breath is fast, if it's slow, if it's deep, if it's shallow, it doesn't matter. I'm not trying to change the breath. I'm not directing the breath. I'm not trying to make it calm. I'm letting the breath do whatever it wants to do. The practice is having the mind pay attention to what's actually going on. And actually, then what becomes interesting, like meditation actually can be interesting, is then let's say like you hear a sound or you have a thought or an emotion, if you're still doing this breath practice, you can say, oh, okay, I had that thought. I had that story that like totally distracted me. Once I notice that, what's the effect on the breath? So creating that linkage between thought, emotion, sound, distraction, whatever, and paying attention to how that affects my breath. One that I hear all the time is, I can't meditate, my mind is too busy. I sit down and meditate and I just can't stop thinking. So just like how I was saying, we're not trying to control the breath. In the practice, we're not trying to control the thinking. We're trying to wake up to the thinking. We're trying to build a relationship with the thinking. So just like you would notice the breath, there are also practices where you notice the thoughts and notice like the quality of mind that that thought creates. Think of how much power we could have if we start to go down a certain like thought pattern and we're like, wait a second, I know exactly what's happening right now. I know that that's going to make me mad and unhealthy and all the things. Okay, now I can decide what I want to do with that. And that comes back to that internal liberation feeding into external liberation. I can stop doing things that are not wise and helpful, or start to do things that are wise and helpful. So this conception that like I'm bad at meditating because I have too many thoughts, that's not a real thing. Like what's real is our minds were made to think. So we're gonna have a lot of thoughts. And actually, maybe when we just start meditating, because we're actually shining this light of awareness on the thoughts, maybe it seems like we have even more, because before we were just like, they were just on autopilot and like they were going on constantly. But now we're like, oh, I'm actually paying attention to my mind and my thoughts. And that's okay. It's like this relief to be like, oh, it's okay that I'm thinking as long as I'm aware of the thinking. Another misconception is that meditation is like going to the spa. Like it should just be, it's like a moment of creating a blissful, peaceful state, and that there should be zero suffering involved. And suffering seems like a really heavy word, but I also mean like a sense of dissatisfaction or boredom or anything that be considered negative. So meditation is not just about being blissed out and like, it's not the same thing as going to the spa. It's about waking up to what's real in this moment and grounding ourselves in ourselves. And so all of that does over the long term, over periods of practice, create stress relief and create peace and like a better relationship with ourselves and with others. But the actual practice sometimes is not going to be that blissful, as I was saying, because shit comes up sometimes. Or sometimes I'm feeling more bored, or sometimes I'm feeling more settled. Like, I don't know, my body does different things at different times. Give like a more specific example, because this usually is like a little counterintuitive. There is a practice that I do and that I teach called metta, M-E-T-T-A, and it's a loving kindness practice. And essentially the practice is one of wishing for yourself and for others to be well, including people that might be difficult for you. Like it's wishing for everyone, all beings without exception, even the people you hate, to be well. So that's, I mean, it's a challenging practice. But I find that when I do metta, after I do metta, I'll like walk around and I'll be like, everyone's so nice now. What's going on? And I don't know if that's like my perception or like I'm giving off a certain vibe because I just wished all this loving kindness on everyone. But yeah, like other people seem nicer when I do metta. So the place where you can find Nashville POC Sangha is all of our handles and the website is all Nashville POC Sangha, all one word, SANGHA is Sangha. So it's NashvillePOCSangha.org. And from there, you can sign up for the newsletter. And here's a fun hint. If you sign up for the newsletter, when you start to get them, there's a little link where you can click to read previous newsletters. And I was saying earlier that I basically summarize the teachings that I offer in the newsletter. So you can go back and like read teachings from before, from previous newsletters. On Instagram, we're also at Nashville POC Sangha.